Budapest, August 1994. Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley walked into a children's hospital carrying toys. They were newly married. They were followed everywhere. Photographers wanted the couple. Reporters wanted the marriage. Fans wanted Michael. But inside Bethesda Children's Hospital, none of that mattered. There were no screaming crowds. No stage lights, no music. Just sick children, hospital beds, doctors, parents waiting for answers. Michael and Lisa Marie moved from room to room handing out gifts. For a few minutes, children who had spent their days surrounded by medicine were smiling at something completely different. Then Michael saw one boy, 4 years old. His name was Bela Farkas, and he was seriously ill. Michael could have smiled for the cameras, handed him a toy, and left. That would have been enough for the photograph. But it was not enough for Michael, because after the scheduled visit was over, Michael and Lisa Marie did something the cameras did not require. They came back, specifically for Bela, and this time the question was no longer, what toy would make him smile? It was, what would keep him alive? Doctors explained that Bela needed a liver transplant, a procedure he could not receive in Hungary at the time. The cost was enormous. The problem was urgent, and Michael made a promise. Months later, Bela received the transplant. Then, 2 years after that first hospital visit, Michael returned to Budapest, and waiting for him was the same little boy, not lying helplessly in a hospital bed, standing, older, alive. Smiling, Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley entered that hospital carrying toys. But one child turned a charity visit into something much bigger, because the most important gift Michael gave that day was not inside a box. It was the promise he kept after the cameras were gone. Before we go deeper into what happened inside those Budapest hospitals, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Here, we look beyond the headlines and famous photographs to uncover the real stories, documented acts, and human moments behind the people the world thought it knew. Because this visit began with toys and smiles, but one little boy turned it into something far more serious and far more unforgettable. To understand why those hospital photographs attracted so much attention, you have to remember what Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley represented in August 1994. They were not simply two celebrities arriving in Budapest. They were one of the most discussed couples in the world. Only days earlier, Lisa Marie had publicly confirmed that she and Michael had married privately 11 weeks before. Contemporary reports said the ceremony had taken place in the Dominican Republic in May. Their decision to keep the marriage secret had only increased the fascination surrounding them. Everywhere they went, people wanted proof that the marriage was real, proof that they were happy, proof that the daughter of Elvis Presley and Michael Jackson were actually living as husband and wife. So when the couple flew to Hungary on August 5th, reporters followed, photographers waited, fans gathered outside their hotel. UPI described the Budapest trip as their first known foreign trip together after the marriage became public. Outside, Michael and Lisa Marie were a headline. Inside a children's hospital, they became something else. Visitors. The children waiting in those rooms were not debating celebrity gossip. They were not analyzing the marriage. Some were seriously ill. Some had been in hospitals for long periods. Their world was measured in treatments, doctors, beds, medications, and waiting. And Michael had not come empty-handed. His Heal the World Foundation had arranged for toys to be distributed during visits to children's hospitals in Budapest. For the cameras outside, Michael and Lisa Marie were the newlyweds everyone wanted to see. For the children inside, they were about to become the couple walking through the door carrying gifts. And this trip had another purpose too, because while the hospital corridors were quiet, another part of Budapest was being transformed into a massive Michael Jackson production. Michael had not traveled to Hungary solely for charity work. He was there for filming, connected with the project that would become HI Story. Contemporary reports described a large-scale production using Budapest's architecture and enormous numbers of extras, turning parts of the city into the backdrop for dramatic promotional imagery. UPI reported that Michael's schedule involved filming as well as planned visits to children's hospitals on behalf of Heal the World. Think about the contrast. On one side of the city, cameras, production crews, extras, crowds, Michael Jackson at the center of a spectacle designed to look enormous. On the other side, a hospital corridor, a child in a bed, a parent sitting nearby. No choreography, no applause, no second take. Michael could move between those two worlds within hours. Outside the hospital, his fame created chaos. Inside it, that fame could be used differently. A child who had spent days looking at hospital walls could suddenly see Michael Jackson standing beside the bed. A toy could arrive. A photograph could be taken. For a moment, something exciting could interrupt the routine. That was the plan. Michael's spokesman had said the couple would visit 2 children's hospitals and distribute what UPI described as truckloads of toys. It sounded like a straightforward charity appearance. Arrive, visit, give, leave. But that is not what happened. Because somewhere during those hospital visits, Michael stopped seeing the day as a schedule. He noticed one child, and once he understood what that child needed, the entire meaning of the trip began to change. One of the most striking numbers connected to the Budapest visit is not a medical figure. It is a toy count. 2,650. UPI reported that Michael donated 2,650 toys to patients at Heim-Pal Children's Hospital. 2,650. It is easy to say the number quickly, but stop and picture it. Boxes arriving, toys being sorted, children receiving something that had nothing to do with illness. Because that matters. A toy does not perform surgery. It does not replace medical equipment. It does not pay a hospital's bills. It cannot cure a disease. But a sick child is still a child. Hospitalization does not erase the need to play. It does not erase excitement. It does not erase the feeling of receiving something that belongs to childhood instead of medicine. And Lisa Marie was part of those visits. Contemporary reporting places her beside Michael as they visited the hospitals together. She had arrived in Budapest with him as his wife, and the two moved through this charity trip under extraordinary media attention. That presence matters because later retellings can easily turn the story into Michael alone walking through a hospital. That was not the complete picture. Lisa Marie was there. The newly married couple visited children together. They were photographed together. They returned together. But the financial promises that followed would be linked specifically to Michael and his Heal the World Foundation. That distinction matters too. And there was another side to the toy donation that makes the story more credible. Because one hospital official appreciated what Michael and Lisa Marie had done, while also admitting that toys were not necessarily what the hospital needed most. Irvin Smirks, the financial director of Heim-Pal Children's Hospital, gave UPI a surprisingly candid reaction. He said Michael and Lisa Marie had shown considerable sensitivity toward the children. He also said the gifts had made the children very happy. But he noted that the hospital was underfunded and could have used other forms of assistance more urgently. That is important. Because charity stories become less meaningful when every complicated detail is removed. The visit was not magic. It did not repair the entire hospital. It did not solve Hungary's medical funding problems. The children received toys. They received attention. They experienced excitement. But the institution still had practical needs. Equipment, funding, resources. And Smirch essentially acknowledged both truths at once. The visit had limits, and the visit made children happy. Those two things can exist together. In fact, that tension sets up the most important part of the story. Because celebrity charity often begins with what can be seen. A famous person handing a child a gift, a photograph, a smile, a news report. But the harder question comes later. What happens when the child needs something that cannot fit inside a gift box? Michael was about to confront exactly that question. The toys could change an afternoon. One child needed someone to help change what happened next. His name was Béla Farkas. He was 4 years old. And Michael was about to learn that the most important thing he could give Béla was not a toy at all. Béla Farkas was a patient at Bethesda Children's Hospital. He was 4, and he was seriously ill with liver disease. According to contemporaneous AFP reporting, his condition had worsened, and he needed a liver transplant that could not be performed in Hungary, because the required medical capability was not available there at the time. The hospital had already explored treatment at a clinic in Brussels, but the cost was beyond what Hungary's social security system could manage. That is the reality Michael walked into. This was not a problem that could be solved by cheering the child up for an afternoon. Bela needed specialized medicine. He needed access to doctors outside Hungary. He needed surgery, and surgery meant money. We should be careful not to invent Michael's private thoughts in that room. We do not know exactly what he was thinking. We do not need to. The documented sequence is stronger than imagined dialogue. Michael and Lisa Marie visited Bethesda. They met Bela. They learned about his condition, and then they returned. That is the detail that changes everything, because many celebrity hospital appearances are scheduled tightly. The star enters, photographs are taken, hands are shaken, the entourage leaves, the event is complete. But the hospital director later said, Michael and Lisa Marie came back after Michael had been working on the video production. They came back because of Bela. The first visit had been part of the Budapest schedule. The second was different. Now the question was no longer how to make a child smile. It was whether anything could be done to keep him alive. This may be the most revealing detail in the entire story. Michael and Lisa Marie returned to Bethesda. AFP reported that hospital director Dr. Thomas Deseri described the second visit as spontaneous and said the couple returned without bodyguards, specifically to see Bela. Think about the difference. The first hospital appearance had publicity value. The cameras knew about it. The trip was already generating international attention. Michael's schedule included charity, but this return focused on one child, a 4-year-old boy whose skin and frail appearance reflected a disease much more serious than a celebrity visit could fix. Michael asked questions. The doctors explained the situation. A transplant was needed. The operation would have to happen abroad. The cost was beyond the resources available to the child through the Hungarian medical system, and then Michael offered to help. This is where the visual motif of the story changes. At the beginning, Michael enters carrying toys. Now he returns, asking what treatment requires. The movement is small. The meaning is enormous. It is easy for a celebrity to be photographed giving. It is harder to make a commitment that still matters after the photograph disappears from newspapers. Michael had spent years using phrases like "heal the world" in his music and philanthropy. Now he was standing inside a hospital where healing had a specific problem attached to it. A real child, a real disease, a real operation, a real cost. And the next step would determine whether this visit became only a memory or something with consequences. Michael committed to helping. Contemporary reporting in August 1994 said he offered financial assistance for Bela's liver transplant and also promised Bethesda medical support, including respiratory equipment and air conditioning. The exact financial figures reported over the years are not perfectly consistent. That is worth saying clearly. UPI initially reported a commitment of $200,000 connected with financing the transplant. A 1996 follow-up later described the operation as having been financed by a $120,000 donation from Michael's Heal the World Foundation. So the strongest factual statement is also the simplest. Michael committed his foundation to helping finance Bela's life-saving treatment. The number matters, but the outcome matters more, because charity stories are often measured in promises. This one can be measured in what happened next. A child who could not receive the necessary transplant in his own country was connected with treatment abroad. Money was made available. The process moved forward, and the story continued long after Michael and Lisa Marie left Budapest. There is something important in that. The toys were immediate. A child could open one right away. Treatment worked differently. It required coordination, doctors, travel, medical facilities, money, time, a suitable transplant process. The emotional part of charity happens in a moment. The practical part can take months. And that is exactly what makes Bela's story more powerful than a photograph. The visit ended. The promise did not. Hungarian doctors had already made clear that Bela's transplant could not be carried out in Hungary at that time. The solution had to come from outside the country. A Washington Post brief, published later in August 1994, reported that the seriously ill 4-year-old had arrived in Belgium for a liver transplant that Michael Jackson had promised Heal the World would help pay for. That changes the timeline completely. Michael meets Bella, learns about the transplant, offers help, and within days the child's medical journey moves beyond Hungary. The doctors still had to do the difficult work. Michael did not perform the operation. He was not a physician. He was not the transplant team. A donor was necessary. Medical professionals were necessary. Care before and after surgery was necessary. Many people stood between Bela and recovery. Michael's role was different. He had access to money. He had a foundation. He had the ability to remove a financial obstacle that the child and hospital could not easily overcome. That is not everything. But it can be the difference between treatment existing in theory and treatment becoming possible in practice. And eventually, Bela received the transplant. The most convincing evidence that the effort mattered appears not in 1994, but 2 years later. Because in 1996, Michael Jackson returned to Budapest. And he went back to Bethesda. 2 years after the original hospital visit, Michael returned. By then, Bella was 6, and the image was completely different. In 1994, Michael had met a 4-year-old child whose liver disease had made a transplant urgently necessary. In 1996, contemporary reporting described Michael greeting a smiling, healthy-looking Bela at Bethesda after the child had undergone the life-saving transplant with financial help from the Heal the World Foundation. That reunion is the emotional payoff of the entire story. Not because Michael should receive credit for every person involved. He should not. Doctors performed the surgery. Medical staff cared for Bela. A transplant required expertise far beyond anything a celebrity could provide, but Michael had helped make the treatment financially possible. That distinction matters, because exaggeration would actually weaken the story. Michael did not save Bela by himself. He helped create access to the people who could. And now, 2 years later, the child was standing in front of him again, alive, smiling, older. That is the smile that matters most. The first hospital smiles came from surprise, toys, excitement, Michael Jackson walking into the room. This smile came after something much harder: treatment, surgery, recovery, time. Michael had once entered Bethesda carrying gifts. Now he returned and saw the result of a promise made after one of those visits. And by 1996, Lisa Marie was no longer beside him in the same role she had occupied during that first Budapest trip. That brings us back to her place in the story. Lisa Marie Presley should not disappear from this story. She was part of the 1994 hospital visits. She traveled to Budapest with Michael. She went into the hospitals with him, and importantly, the hospital director said she returned with Michael during the spontaneous second visit to see Bela. That is documented. What is not documented as clearly is Lisa personally funding Bela's transplant. Contemporary and later reporting connects the financial support to Michael and the Heal the World Foundation, so her role should not be exaggerated, but it should not be erased either. Think about what those days represented. Lisa Marie was the daughter of Elvis Presley. Michael was arguably the most famous pop star alive. Their marriage had just become public. The press was treating almost every appearance as evidence in a larger celebrity drama. Was the marriage genuine? How did they behave together? What did Lisa think of Michael? What did Michael think of Lisa? But inside those hospital rooms, those questions became irrelevant. A child did not care about the tabloid narrative. A child saw Michael Jackson, Lisa Marie Presley, gifts, attention, something unusual happening in an otherwise difficult day. Their marriage would eventually end. The headlines would change. The public interpretation of their relationship would change. But those photographs preserved a separate moment. Michael and Lisa Marie walking through a hospital together. Not as an argument about celebrity, as visitors trying to make sick children smile. A photograph can capture a surprising amount. Michael's expression, Lisa Marie beside him. A child looking up, a toy, a hospital bed, a hand reaching out. But there are things a photograph cannot show. It cannot show what happens 6 months later. It cannot show paperwork, hospital arrangements, medical travel, funding, recovery. a transplant team, a child growing older. That is why this story becomes more interesting the further we move away from the original pictures. If we stopped at the hospital visit, we would have a warm celebrity moment. Michael and Lisa bring gifts, children smile, everyone leaves. But the deeper story is outside the frame. The photograph captures emotion. The chronology captures consequence. The first visit says, Michael Jackson came here. The second visit says, he remembered one child. The transplant says, something continued afterward. The 1996 reunion says, there was a result. That does not make every photograph pure. It does not mean publicity played no role. It means the photograph is incomplete. The smile lasted for the photograph. The promise had to survive after it. And that raises the uncomfortable question any responsible documentary should ask. Was this charity, or was it publicity? There were cameras. That is undeniable. Michael was in Budapest for a major production. His new marriage was dominating headlines. The hospital visits generated news coverage, and UPI itself used skeptical language about the public relations dimension of the visit, while quoting a hospital administrator who said the event had been staged in a recognizably American promotional style. So yes, there was publicity. But that does not automatically answer the moral question. Because publicity and real assistance are not mutually exclusive. A hospital can benefit from attention even when cameras are present. A child can enjoy a toy even if photographers document the moment. A celebrity can gain positive publicity and still do something useful. That is why the hospital administrator's full reaction matters. He did not say the visit solved everything. He said the hospital could have used different forms of help. But he also acknowledged that Michael and Lisa Marie showed sensitivity and made the children happy. Then there is Bela. Publicity explains why cameras were present. It does not explain away what happened after they left. Michael and Lisa returned. Treatment funding followed. The child received medical help. Michael later returned and saw him again. Those facts make the easiest cynical interpretation incomplete. Was the visit visible? Yes. Was it useful publicity? Certainly. Did something genuine happen too? The evidence says yes. And the clearest proof is not the first photograph. It is the second meeting, 2 years later. Look at the sequence from beginning to end. Michael and Lisa Marie arrive in Budapest. The marriage is fresh public news. Crowds gather. Michael films. The couple enters children's hospitals. Thousands of toys are donated. Children smile. One administrator expresses gratitude, but also points out the limits of the gesture. Michael notices Bela. The couple comes back. Doctors explain the transplant. Michael offers help. Heal the World becomes involved. Bela receives treatment. Then, 2 years later, Michael returns. And Bela is there. That progression is the real story. Smile, concern, action, outcome. If the story stopped at the toys, the title would still be true. Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley brought smiles to young patients. But the story would be much smaller, because the most important smile does not happen when the celebrity first walks into the room. It happens later, after the cameras, after the operation, after the uncertainty. A 6-year-old boy smiling at the man he first met when his future was far less certain. That is where a celebrity visit becomes something more meaningful than a publicity photograph, not because publicity disappears, because consequence survives it. Return to Budapest, August 1994, a hospital corridor. Michael Jackson walking through it, Lisa Marie Presley beside him. Toys arriving for children who had spent too much time around medicine. Outside the building, people are screaming Michael's name. Reporters are following the marriage. Cameras want an image. Inside, fame has a different value. A famous face can make a child forget the hospital for a few minutes. A famous name can attract attention to an institution. Money can help turn a medical possibility into an actual treatment. But this story should not become a fairy tale. Michael and Lisa Marie did not cure the children they visited. The toy donation did not fix every problem inside the hospitals. One administrator made that clear at the time. That is exactly why Bela matters. His story shows what happened when the gesture went beyond the visit. Michael entered Bethesda as a celebrity carrying gifts. He left, knowing the name of one 4-year-old boy who needed something much more serious. He and Lisa Marie came back. Michael promised help. The Heal the World Foundation helped finance the transplant. 2 years later, Michael returned to Bethesda, and Bella was there, 6 years old, alive, smiling. The cameras captured Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley bringing happiness into hospital rooms. Those photographs are beautiful, but the part worth remembering most happened after the photograph. A promise had to become action. A child had to receive treatment. Time had to pass. And when Michael finally came back, the little boy he had once held in a hospital was there to meet him again. The first gift was a toy. The lasting gift was opportunity. A chance for doctors to do what Michael could never do himself. A chance for Bella to keep growing. And a chance for one of those hospital smiles to survive long after Michael and Lisa Marie had walked back out through the doors. If this story showed you a side of Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley's Budapest visit that you had never seen before, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments, which part stayed with you most? The thousands of toys given to sick children? Michael and Lisa Marie returning specifically to see Bella? Or Michael coming back 2 years later and finding that same little boy alive and smiling? Because celebrity charity can create a beautiful photograph, but the moments that matter most are the ones that still mean something after the cameras are gone.